weather enthusiasts. I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to discuss with you today. The models have continued to significantly uptrend with this area of interest. The chances have really started to explode over the last 24 hours, and we're already seeing some pretty decent organization to some extent on satellite imagery. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it right here. So here's your situation that we have for you right here. We now are in the red zone, ladies and gentlemen. We now have a 70% chance of formation in the next 7 days. This is as of the 8 a.m. advisory. I'm recording this early. Once again, this is going to kind of be like that this week. I know, I'm sorry, but this is what the situation that we have for you right now. So let's go ahead and read this out. A tropical wave located over the far eastern tropical Atlantic south of the Cabo Verde Islands is producing disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Environmental conditions appear conducive for gradual development of this system during the next several days, and a tropical depression is likely to form later this week or weekend. This system is expected to move westward to west-northwestward at around 15 miles per hour across the eastern and central tropical Atlantic through the weekend. 30% in the next 48 hours. It was at 0 when we recorded last. It was 10% when the video went out. And 70% in the next 7 days. It was 50% when the video went out yesterday. So, significant uptrend that we're seeing right there for you ladies and gentlemen already. And as we can look at satellite, and we will show you in just a second, we can give you a general idea as to why that is and why the system is more likely to develop now than it was a couple of days ago. Going over to satellite imagery for you guys right here, let's go ahead and go to the eastern Atlantic. This is where we're at right here. You have your tropical wave over here. It's kind of the rotation is generally around this area right here, just in the eastern part of that convection right here. So you're definitely going to want to watch out for that as well. Definitely seeing some pretty decent convection and some pretty impressive storms firing off already right here. You're definitely seeing a lot more of that outflow that I was talking to you about earlier as well. That's a sign that this wave is very healthy and is on a good pace to develop. So that is something to watch out for right there. That outflow channel right there. When you see that in a wave that's right now kind of the way it is, that's a good way of telling, okay, yeah, this is in a pretty decent environment. It's a pretty healthy wave. It's in a moist environment. You're going to want to watch out for this right here. But ultimately, just looking at it on the surface level, already we're seeing convection. It's not really the most popcorning convection. It's mainly remaining sustained. Part of that is attributed to the fact that it's kind of hugging to the ITCZ right now. But also part of it is kind of the storm starting to produce its own convection. And it's doing it in a way that where typically you would have your popcorning convection before with things going up and then dying down, going up, dying down. Now, what you're noticing with this right here is more so sustained, and it's sustaining itself for a longer period of time. So that's something you're going to need to watch out for, and that's just kind of an indicator of how healthy this tropical wave is becoming. Going to your water vapor imagery, your red, green, and blue, what you're looking at right here is kind of this system establishing itself in the moisture pocket right here. You do have some dry air to the northwest of it right here, but that outflow channel right there is kind of helping it as a protector right here, and that's really not going to cause too much trouble. Another thing that is helping this system is the fact that this system originated further to the south than what we were originally anticipating, and it's kind of concentrated itself in that moisture pocket and in better conditions overall, because to the north there is some wind shear, to the north there's some dry air that could kind of intrude this if it moved up to the north. However, because it's remained further to the south than expected, it's kind of been ultimately taking more advantage of those down shear conditions and more advantage of that moisture, and it likely will continue for the next few days or so, and that is something we're going to want to watch, especially as the system starts to organize more, starts to develop more, as the system becomes a tropical depression and a tropical storm eventually, as a lot of the models are forecasting. And this may potentially pose a threat to land once again, so we're going to want to watch out for that as well. Going to true color imagery as well, yes, you have some Sahara dust up to the north, but where it's at right now, is pretty much in this area of pretty decent convection going for it right here. You have your outflow boundary that you're noticing right here. You have your convection that's starting to fire on all cylinders. Even at this early stage right here, you're definitely noticing that as well. It needs to organize. It needs to wrap around the center of circulation. I will tell you that. That's going to probably take a couple of days or so for that to happen, but we'll still need to keep a close eye on it. We'll keep you updated on it here, and I think it's going to really do it, and I think it's really going to ramp up as time continues to go on. So we're going to want to pay attention to that here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and now go to some model runs. We're going to show you the ensembles and the operational runs, and just to give you an idea as to what we're looking at right here and how these models are really responding, and really, especially the European, has quickly been catching up to the rest of the models. So here's what we have for you right here. We're going to go ahead and go to 72 hours out just to first start and show you where it's kind of originates from. 72 hours out, it's a very concentrated signal already. That's really not something that that surprises me, to be honest with you guys right there, mainly because the situation that kind of that we're looking at right now, of the way it's been organizing and developing so far, it's kind of been going for it at this point. So now we'll go ahead and go to 96 hours out as well. Another interesting tidbit to note is the shift further to the west compared to what we've seen with previous model runs. A lot of the model runs have been shifting more and more and more to the west this early out. So we're going to want to watch out for that as well, because that could put the Lesser Antilles in the line of fire, Puerto Rico in the line of fire, heck, maybe even the Dominican Republic in the line of fire once again. And this couldn't be a scenario where, you know, like Aaron, it stays off to sea. We could see a scenario where if the high pressure system over Bermuda and the Azores stays strong enough, and there's really not that much of a trough that starts to curve it over, you could have a scenario where that could ram right into the Leeward Islands, unlike what we saw with Aaron. So that is something we are taking into consideration right here. And now we'll go ahead and go to 5 days out. As you can see, it's really starting to become more concentrated. You're noticing a lot of signals just really popping up. But another thing to note is there is actually a lot of power in these ensembles runs right here. I believe I saw a 970s right here. There's a 960s over here as well. This is 5 days out, and we're already starting to see quite a bit of power associated with these ensembles, or this ensemble suite, I would say. That is a very concerning trend, if you ask me. And the reason I find that concerning is for two reasons. Number one, we were not expecting the system to develop as quickly as it's doing right now. We were not expecting the system to really start running into potentially better than expected conditions. The talk of the town for the last few days was, oh, the conditions are not great. They're really bad right now, Patrick. Why are you harping on this? That's what was really the talk of the town. A lot has changed since Saturday night when we streamed about this. And what has changed is mainly boils down to three main things. Further south than expected, more moisture than expected, and there is actually also less wind shear that's currently on the observations now than what we were originally anticipating. So that's something you're going to have to take into account. But now let's go ahead and go to 6 days out right here. The power only continues right here. But I will say, though, there are a couple of distinct areas. The majority of the models do keep this further to the south. They do keep it further to the south and potentially heading towards the Antilles right here. But there are a small outlier of models that have a considerably more power than the rest of them do, that kind of have it a bit further up to the north. That's pretty typical. If we see systems like this rapidly intensify the way that some of those ensembles are forecasting, they will move further up to the north, mainly due to Coriolis and all of that stuff. So that is something you're going to want to take into account right there, and something to keep in mind moving forward. Now going to 7 days out right here, considerably further south than what we've seen previously. Matter of fact, what were we at the 12Z? Yeah, 12Z right here, much further to the north and a bit further to the east. What are we looking at now with the 0Z suites? Considerably further to the south and considerably further to the west. And this isn't just one of the ensembles. This is the majority of the ensembles right here. as this ridge over here really starts to turn up and really starts to strengthen. You do have this ridge over here in the United States reinforcing that as well. So that is also something that we've been watching out for. Now let's go ahead and go to 8 days out right here. 8 days out, you already are starting to see a lot of the ensembles crash into parts of the Lesser Antilles right here. And that is a huge concern of mine right here. Let's go ahead and go to 9 days out as well to see how this ultimately pans out. 9 days out, you're definitely noticing more of these ensembles starting to run into the Lesser Antilles. You're noticing even some ensembles with power starting to run into the Antilles. I will tell you this, a lot of the ensembles that rapidly intensify, especially at this point over here, do start to curve a bit further up to the north right here, so we're going to want to watch out for that. But looking at 10 days out for you guys right here, even some of the powerful ensembles do have this ramming into the Lesser Antilles right here, and this is a considerable shift compared to what we've seen at the 12Z. All the 12Z models had this further up to the north and further out to sea right here, and we do have this thing I do want to talk about in just a second, but going to 0Z right here, 0Z is pretty interesting right here as well. All the models we've noticed have shifted this further to the west and further to the south towards the Lesser Antilles. The 0Z suite of models is forecasting for a stronger ridge initially that could run it into parts of the Antilles. This is a shift we're going to need to watch right here, and considering the system hasn't even developed yet, there is still time to figure out, okay, what's going to happen with this right here, and how is this going to pan out? Because, in my opinion, based on just what I've seen right here, the Lesser Antilles absolutely could be in the line of fire with this. So could Puerto Rico at this current point. I'm not putting you guys on notice right now. Putting you guys on notice means, hey, this is probably going to head towards your area. That's what putting you on notice means. But you need to watch out for these trends right here. This is, in my opinion, right here, this is less likely to go out to sea compared to what we saw with Aaron right here, and that's because we are looking at a stronger ridge, especially in the 0Z suite of models. So that's what you have with your ensemble runs. Right here, we'll show you the operational runs just to give you some context and give you an idea of how those are catching up. But as you can see, here's what we have right here. A system starts to organize and potentially develop. I would say down the line, the European starts to have it getting its act together about 5 or so days out, so not until the weekend. So it's kind of taking its time to organize and develop in the Lesser Antilles right here. But it moves kind of further to the south, and by the time we're a week out, pretty much latitudinally, it's kind of, I believe this is close to Barbados in terms of the latitude, and Dominica as well. So we're going to want to watch out for that as well. But then it does start to curve up towards the north. The European really yanks it up to the north. I'm trying to figure out what exactly is causing this right here. Let's see what the 500 millibar height anomalies are doing. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Right here, I'm a little curious to see what's yanking it. I can kind of see why. They're kind of seeing a little bit of a low pressure system over up here to the north of it, kind of yanking it towards the north. I'm not 100% sure how accurate that will be right there, but if that were the case, it would yank it up to the north. Otherwise, this would just crash right into the Antilles based on what we're seeing with the ridging pattern with this time around. So we're going to want to pay attention to it, but still, the European does have this system intensifying once you get to the southwestern Atlantic, getting up to hurricane strength as it kind of moves out to sea right here. But what were we at? The question is, where were we at the 12Z run compared to this? The 12Z was considerably further out to sea compared to the 0Z with this. The 0Z has shown a massive shift to the west and a massive shift towards land. Had that low pressure system kind of isolated over here to the north not existed, this system would have crashed into the Antilles right here, and given the conditions that we're looking at over there, this system could have intensified very quickly before that happened. So there is a little bit of kind of shenanigans with the European right there. I don't know if that low is going to kind of remain over there or not, but we're going to want to pay attention to it. And considering it's the only thing that yanks it further up to the north, I'm kind of skeptical of that model run. So we'll have to pay attention to it as well. Looking at the GFS as well. GFS, here's the 0Z. having the system developing actually pretty quickly, potentially up to hurricane strength, but because it moves further up to the north, it kind of starts to crash into some of that shear, but it kind of blushes it off a little bit, and it kind of remains out to sea right here. So the GFS really wants this further up to the north and staying out to sea. But what were we at compared to the 12Z right here? Yeah, the 12Z was much further to the east right here. The 0Z has shifted considerably further to the west. So every single model we have seen has shifted it way west, closer towards land. So we're going to need to see if that continues, because if it does, that would be a huge problem for a lot of people. And maybe instead of a near miss, what we saw with Aaron, this could be a potentially big system that we're looking for right here. Looking at the Canadian run, this system starts to organize and develop right here, kind of stays, moves towards the west, takes its time organizing, but the Canadian is kind of interestingly going with what the GFS is going and mainly staying out to sea. But just for my curiosity, what was the 12Z like? 12Z, still a pretty significant shift to the west right here for you, ladies and gentlemen. Just giving you that context right here. So it's still a shift to the west. It's been like that with every single model right here. And now lastly, we'll go ahead and go to the Icon run right here. Icon is also kind of interesting. I know the NHC doesn't really use this very much, but we still want to show it just to see, okay, how is this panning out and how is this model shifted compared to what we've seen previously. Icon has actually kind of slowed down with its development until about 3.5 days out or so, and then it starts to organize, it gets its act together, comes tropical storm strength, gets up to hurricane strength actually by about 5 to 6 days out, moves further to the west right here. You do have that strong ridge right here, and you do have this stronger ridge that's reinforcing this right here. Just to look at the 500 millibar heights right here, yeah, that explains it pretty quickly. You do have that ridge reinforcing it, and that's been kind of consistent with the 0Z suite of models. You have this strong Azores high right here, and then you have a stronger high off of Newfoundland that's kind of reinforcing it initially, and that what you're getting is a 962 millibar system heading potentially towards the Antilles in the short term. But even compared to what we've seen with the 12Z, actually never mind, hold on, let's go ahead and go back to the 0Z and compare that to the 12Z. 12Z is kind of interesting. The icon's actually shifted a little bit further up to the north compared to the 12Z, so we'll have to watch out for that as well, but all the major models that are really screaming about this are shifting this way to the west, way towards better conditions as well, so we're going to have to watch out for those going forward. We're looking at better water temperatures associated with this, and we're looking at better shear, better moisture, all of that stuff as well. And the reason I'm also concerned about this is if we continue to see these shifts towards the west and kind of keeping to the south of a lot of the wind shear that's kind of in the region right here. Let's look at the 200-850 millibar shear right here. Looking at this right here, yeah, it's further to the south, that wind shear, and that outflow that we were talking about in the satellite earlier, that's going to get caught into that wind shear and allow for some a better circulation and potentially better breathing room for development right here. And that's going to mainly be a consistent pattern right here. Yes, there could be some wind shear that inhibits development initially, but as we get towards closer towards the Lesser Antilles right here, a lot of that wind shear kind of moves out of the way and stays to the north, just outside of the core of it right here, enough for the outflow to really catch on to it and really tighten up the circulation as well. So you're going to want to pay attention to that as well. And another thing I do want to note is if kind of the European scenario holds and we have a low pressure yanking this up to the north, it would run it into the shear initially, but as time would go on, it would allow, ultimately the system would start to organize and strengthen based off of the latest returns right here, because the wind shear is going to collapse a little bit and kind of give it some distance. So that's something we're going to want to watch as well, and we'll continue to keep you updated on things here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. We're going to be live streaming tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, and 8 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time to talk more about this. We're just waiting for a little bit more data and information as well. We've seen rapid escalations today, but I want to look and see, okay, are these model shifts going to hold, or are they going to backtrack a bit? That's what we're waiting on, and we'll keep you updated on that. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you'd like to help out, hang out, or ask us some questions, feel free to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that is in the end screen. And with that being said, Have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.